Hey, good evening, everyone. Am I audible and is the screen visible to everybody? Great. Today we are going to do a basic, simple topic of jumbled passages. Not very sure whether this topic is there's a chance of this appearing in the exam, but nevertheless, if there are any questions from this, then we should be able to solve them. The chances of this type of question coming in the CLAT is low, but we cannot eliminate it because CLAT is known for putting in bouncers once in a while. So it's better to do the basic theory of these type of questions. So jumbled passages has a very simple funda. In these type of questions, you are given a paragraph containing four or five sentences, or a single sentence broken into four or five parts, and each part is labeled A, B, C, D, E, or P, Q, R, S, and so on. In some cases, you may be given the first and the last line. In some cases, you might not be told which is the first and the last line. All the given sentences or all the given parts may be out of order. So, in either case, you have to rearrange these parts so that the complete sequence of lines or sentences makes complete sense. So, there are a couple of strategies which can be followed to solve questions of these types. Starting with, you could look for something which is an opening line. For example, if you're talking about a person, right, the entire paragraph is describing about a person, let us say Gandhi. So obviously you would start the sentence saying that Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was born in something. You would use the proper noun to start, and then in subsequent sentences the usage of a pronoun may be made. Instead of saying Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, you might say he did this, he did that. So something, if all the sentences contain reference to a person, then using the proper noun may be an indicator that it is the first sentence. But that is not always true. Sometimes you can start with the pronoun for a person and then proper noun. For example, if I'm writing something with a dramatic sense, for example, if I say he's one of the best cricketers of all times, he's known for his outstanding number of centuries. He's known for his great performance in both Test format and One Day internationals. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to the world famous cricketer Rahul Dravid, right? Something like that. So I did not use the proper noun first. I first used the pronouns and then I introduced the name of the person using the proper noun. But that is just for dramatic, the flair. That is just for drama. In most cases, you would have the proper noun first and then the pronoun. So identify what is an opening line. Similarly, some line may be in the nature of a summary or a conclusion. So you can try to identify which line, if possible, comes at the very end of the sequence. Sometimes we have something known as mandatory pairs. Now, mandatory pairs are two sentences which have to come together in a particular order. For example, if I see the word either in some sentence, then I know it must be followed by or, either this or that, neither this nor that, not only but also. So sometimes we know that there are certain sentences which have to be carried in a certain sequence. And then finally, the easiest type of questions are those which contain time references. So we can arrange things chronologically. To arrange things chronologically means to arrange things according to time period. So if there are a lot of times or dates given, then it makes sense to simply arrange the sentences in ascending order of time or date, right? So these are certain tactics, certain strategies which can be followed to solve the questions. But most of the time, you have to make sure that once you have identified either an opener or a closer or a pair, then you find out the option which matches whatever you have identified and go through the complete given sequence to understand does it actually make final sense, right? So let's take a few examples to understand exactly what we can do to solve questions of jumbled passages. Now, I have given you a beginner, I have given you five sentences marked A, B, C, D, and E, where A says the two neighbors never fought each other. B said fights involving three male fiddler crabs have been recorded, but the status of the participants were unknown. C says they pushed or grappled only with the intruder. D said we recorded 17 cases in which a resident that was fighting an intruder was joined by an immediate neighbor, an ally. And E says we therefore tracked 268 intruder males until we saw them fighting a resident male. So you have to rearrange these sentences. You are given four options. You have to rearrange the sentences in the order which you think makes the most sense. What is the order which you think is the best one for this? BEDAC, DEBAC, BDCAE or BCEDA? इंट्रूडर जो दखलंदाजी करता है. Okay. So from the four sentences which we have with us, five sentences in fact, which we have with us, we know that the options may either be or D. These are the only two things which start. So let's understand. D says we recorded 17 cases in which blah blah blah. And B says fights involving three male fiddler clubs have been recorded, but the status of the participants is unknown. So if we say that B, D, you record cases, but B, you are starting with a general sentence that we have recorded, we have seen the fight between crabs, we have recorded it, but we don't know what happened to those who participated in it. So if I say that starting with B is a great option, then D, E, B, A, C is reasonably eliminated. Now B के बाद क्या आएगा? E, D या C? C says they pushed or grappled only with intruder. But who is they? It could be the male fiddler crab, but they pushed or grappled only with the intruder. It tells you right, it directly gets into the fighting status, right? But before that, we need something about the beginning of a fight or something. So C cannot be the second one. So I reasonably eliminate B, C, E, D, A. So now I need to identify, is E the next one or is D the next one? D says we recorded 17 cases in which a resident that was fighting an intruder was joined by an immediate neighbor and ally. And E says we therefore tracked 268 intruder males until we saw them fighting a resident male. So between E and D, in D, we are talking about cases in which the fight is already going on, and in E, it says first you're tracking something and then you see them start the fight. So obviously, you will first track, follow a object, you will see them fighting, and then you will talk about the details of the fight. So E makes a better beginner than D, which would then eliminate B, D, C, A, E because E before D makes more sense. So if I go with B, E, D, A, C, so B, it introduces the concept of fighting of crabs. E says we have now B also says we did not know the status. So we started tracking them till we saw them fighting. Then we recorded 17 cases in which the resident was fighting an intruder who was joined by a neighbor. Then A, the neighbors did not fight each other, but they were fighting with the intruder. So B, E, D, A, C makes most sense. So option one is what we can go with. Got this? B, E, D, A, C. First option. Why that is the best one. Okay. Next. Which one? Five sentences, four options. Okay, if I have to take a look at this particular one, then it says A says he felt justified. तो ये he कौन है? I don't know. B says at times he was fighting. Again ये he कौन है? So A and B से तो start नहीं हो सकता और कोई option A and B से start नहीं होता है. तो ठीक है. I need to check between C, D and E. Now C says Bush felt he had a mission. So it introduces the concept of a person called Bush. D also says Bush was not fighting. So D also introduces a person called Bush. And E says representative democracy is a messy business and a CEO of the White House does not like legislature of second guessers and time wasters. So E talks about a very, very general concept, right? E talks about something related to democracy, something about the CEO of the White House. So E is a general statement, and A, B, C, and D, all four of the first four statements are about a specific person. So obviously general वाला statement एक तरफ और जितने भी specific statements हैं उनको एक तरफ में रख सकता हूं तो E कहीं बीच में नहीं आएगा. E either comes in the beginning or at the end, and there is only one option where I definitely have E in the beginning. So if I go with ECDBA, E the general statement, then option C and D, which talks about, statement C and D, where the name of the person Bush is taken, and finally B and A, where you are talking about the same person but using the pronouns, right? So obviously 4 is the best option in this case. Easy. Now, next one. Hmm. Okay. So now, if I read the options, first one, first statement says in the West, Allied forces had fought their way through southern Italy as far as Rome. A very, very specific description of some incident. B says in June 1944, Germany's military position in World War II appeared hopeless. Now, this is a very, very general statement, right? This is a very, very general statement. It gives you the time, it introduces the time, it introduces which incident they're talking about. So, the year 1944, the time World War II, tells me this may be the beginner. C. In Britain, the task of amassing men and material for liberation of North Europe had been completed. Again, specific incident. D. Red Army was poised to drive Nazis back to Poland. Specific incident. E. Situation on the Eastern Front was catastrophic. Specific incident. So A, C, D, and E are all specific incidents, whereas B introduces the concept of time and the overall situation, that is the World War II. So the starter could be B, which means I would eliminate option 1, I would eliminate option 4. Correct? Now, between these two incidents, C and A, I did not worry about. First, E and D. Is it ED or is it DE? So D says Red Army was poised to drive Nazis. It specifically gives the incident. E says the situation was catastrophic. So If I ask why was the situation catastrophic, then that would say the situation was catastrophic because the Red Army was doing something. So ED maybe, but somebody would argue that you can answer this as Red Army was poised to drive Nazi backs, hence the situation was catastrophic. So then DE is also justified. So between ED and DE, I'm not able to identify. So then we have to hope that either AC or CA, right? Is it AC or is it CA? So A says in the west, Allied forces had fought their way through southern Italy. That means something is happening. And C says in Britain, the task of amassing was completed, right? So continuation के बाद completion makes better sense. तो अगर A C के साथ में जाऊं, then the third one also gets eliminated, leaving me with option 2 as the answer. Then catastrophe is a very very bad situation. The COVID was a catastrophe. Got this one? Right. Next, then. Which one? Which one? Which one? Now, experts such as Larry Burns, head of research at GM, reckon that only such a full hearted leap implies that they have to describe some leap and then say such a thing will do something. तो A से तो start नहीं होगा, and A से अगर start नहीं हो रहा है तो 3 and 4 दोनों ही eliminate हो गए, because when you are saying that such a thing, so that such a thing has to be preceded by the thing itself. So third and fourth eliminated just by looking at the option. नाउ सी के बाद दोनों ऑप्शन में ई है, सो सी ई तो पति ग्यू. नाउ आई नीड टू आइडेंटिफाई ई के बाद डी आएगा या ई के बाद बी आएगा. तो ई पहले तो क्या है? ई सेज अलाउिंग फॉर द रिसोर्सेज नीडेड टू एक्सट्रैक्ट हाइड्रोजन फ्रॉम हाइड्रोकार्बन, ऑयल, कोल और गैस, फ्यूल सेल हैज एन एफिशिएंसी ऑफ 30%. ओके, ई में नंबर मेंशन्ड है 30%. D says that is twice as good as internal combustion engine but only 5 percent point better than diesel. तो E के अंदर भी उन्होंने कोई नंबर डिस्क्राइब किया है परसेंटेज का, एंड D के अंदर भी नंबर एंड परसेंटेज की बात हो रही है. तो C के बाद E का होना इज एब्सोल्युटली पॉसिबल, एंड E के बाद D का होना भी मेक सेंस. E के बाद क्या B आ सकता है? B says but once hydrogen is produced blah 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 blah. तो E के बाद D makes better sense than B, helping me eliminate even the second option, which means first one CEDBA has to be my answer. So I did not even read all the sentences, but using the options itself, I was able to strategically decide which is the best sequence. So CEDBA is what we should go with. To reckon, to guess. To reckon means to guess. Got this one? E and B both talk about extraction of hydrogen. Let's go with that. E says allowing for resources needed to extract hydrogen from blah blah blah. Okay. So if you say after E, you go with B. But once hydrogen is being produced, blah 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 blah, then you take D. D says that is twice as good as IBC but 5% better than. So in D, you're saying something is twice as good but some number. Would B be a better previous statement for D or E? That in D has to refer to a number and B does not contain any number. So without a number preceding it, saying that is what is twice as good as. So I immediately need a number before that. That's why CED is better than CEB. In fact, CEB अगर okay कहूँ तो उसके बाद D will not fit. I need to make sure. So even if one or you get three letters that fit in sequence, you still have to make sure that everything fits. Right. Once you're sure with the answer, just go through all the sentences in that order to make sure that the final answer makes sense. So in this case, yes, one. Moving ahead to the next one. Monuments, bade bade houses, temples, constructions, buildings are monuments. Okay. So we have got five sentences again, four options. C, D, or E, which is a starter. C says most of our traditional sources of information about the Old Kingdom are monuments of the rich, like pyramids and tombs. Okay, seems like a general statement. तो C से शायद begin हो सकता है. E says we know infinitely more about the wealthy people of Egypt than we do about ordinary people, as most monuments were made for the rich. Okay, so E also could be a starter, and E says we know about the wealthy people because the source is the information, and then C says okay, this information is from the monuments like the pyramids and tombs of the rich. Okay, so E might be slightly better than C as a beginner. D, houses in which ordinary Egyptians live had not been preserved, and when most people died, they were buried in simple graves. Okay. Now, C, D, and E के बीच में C talks about rich people, D talks about ordinary people or maybe poor people, and E talks about both wealthy people and ordinary people. So, if I want to construct a sequence of sentences, I would say that first I will talk about something which is common to both A and B, then I would explain A, then I would explain B. So, statement, supposing there are three concepts, 1 to 3. तो पहले स्टेटमेंट के अंदर मैं दो कॉन्सेप्ट्स की बात करता हूं, तो फिर मैं पहले कॉन्सेप्ट को एक्सप्लेन करूंगा एंड दूसरे कॉन्सेप्ट को एक्सप्लेन करूंगा. सो स्टेटमेंट ई इट टॉक्स अबाउट बोथ वेल्दी एंड ऑर्डिनरी. So first you talk about the rich. and then you talk about the ordinary, which makes my sequence E, C, and D. And E, C, D, if is the sequence, then A could be my answer, right? Because if I'm talking about wealthy and then ordinary, then I have to first describe the wealthy and then ordinary. So E, C, D, A, B is my answer simply because that sequence makes the most sense. Correct? Okay. Okay. A, to much of the labor movement it symbolizes. What symbolizes? तो ए से तो स्टार्ट नहीं होगा, ऑप्शन भी नहीं है कोई. बी से स्टार्ट करने वाला भी कोई ऑप्शन नहीं है. तो सी, डी एंड ई के बीच में C says to fox hunting supporters, Labor's 1991 manifesto commitment to ban it symbolizes. Okay, so C कोई specific चीज के बारे में बात कर रहा है, which is fox hunting and labor and blah blah blah. Okay, D says small issues sometimes have large symbolic power, which means D is a very general statement. And E says, to those who enjoy thundering across the country in redcoat after foxes. Okay, so C talks about fox hunting, and E also talks about fox hunting, which are very, very similar specific issues, whereas D is a very, very general statement. So obviously, I would start with a general statement than a specific. That means second and third option can be eliminated. Now the question is D के बाद E या D के बाद B? So D talks small issues sometimes have large symbolic power, and E says to those who enjoy and hunting blah blah blah, fox hunting symbolizes. तो D symbolism की बात करता है and E एक specific example of symbolism देता है. लेकिन D के बाद B अगर पढ़ूं तो small issues sometimes have large symbolic power and to everybody watching. अब B में जो and है उसके आगे कुछ तो होना चाहिए. पहले कोई देख रहा है and कुछ कर रहा है and somebody is watching. तो D के बाद B does not make great sense. Then DEACB is the only option with which I am left. So I would go with DEACB. Now, option E signifies a specific topic of hunting. So we can start with that or not. See, let's say of everything. A is a specific topic. It talks about labor movement and upper class brutality. B is a specific topic, fox hunting. C is a specific topic, fox hunting. E is a specific topic, fox hunting. And D is the only one which is a general statement. तो चार अगर स्पेसिफिक इंसिडेंट रिलेटेड हैं एंड एक जनरल है तो जनरल स्टेटमेंट को बीच में क्यों डालूंगा? Either I should have D in the beginning or I should have D at the end. I cannot have D anywhere in between because D is a very, very general statement. All the other four are related to Labour Party and fox hunting. So that means 1 and 4 में से ही कोई मेरा option होगा. 2 and 3 cannot be my answer because D does not come either in the beginning or in the end in those two cases. Got it? Okay, chalo then. Next one. Mm, nobody is right so far. Nobody has given me the okay one correct answer so far. Ria correct. बाकी किसी का भी सही नहीं. Shell's also right. बाकी nobody got it right. Nobody got it right. नेत्र correct छे. बाकी nobody got it right. Krisha right छे. Dev right छे. Okay. So I have got only two statements which can be the beginning, either A or E. A says, in the case of King Marolkazar's courtship of the princess, there occurs a regrettable hitch. Very specific incident. E says, royal love affairs in olden days were conducted on the correspondence method. E, generic statement. So specific pehle ya generic? Okay, let's see. A says King Merolkazar specific. B, she acknowledges the gift. C, the monarch. D, the princess. So A, B, C, D all are about royalty. But E very generically says royal love affairs. So E से start होना चाहिए, which means सबसे पहले तो first and second option को उड़ा दो. अब ई सी डी ए बी ई सी बी ए डी दोनों के अंदर सी ही सेकंड है. सो ई talks about royal love affairs in olden days were conducted on correspondence method. C, the monarch hearing good report of a neighboring princess dispatches messengers with gifts to her court beseeching an interview. Beseeching means begging for an interview, right? तो एक राजा कोई कोई भी राजा होगा वो बगल की राजकुमारी को लेटर भेजेगा कि प्लीज मेरे को इंटरव्यू दो. इन शॉर्ट पटा रहा है. ओके सो ई सी. Now D or B. D says the princess names a date, formal meeting takes place. After that, everything buzzes along pretty smoothly. Okay? जबकि B बोलता है in the case of King Merolkazar's courtship of the Princess of Outer Isles, there occurs a regrettable hitch. रिग्रेटेबल हिच यानी कि कोई ऐसी चीज होती है जो नहीं होना चाहिए था. यू रिग्रेट समथिंग मीन्स यू आर सॉरी अबाउट समथिंग. सो किंग मरोल कजार जब प्रिंसेस को पटाना चाह रहा था तो उस केस में कुछ लफड़ा हुआ, कुछ तो नॉर्मल से हटकर हुआ जो अच्छा नहीं था. तो जो हटके क्या नहीं हुआ, ए के बाद बी या डी. ए के बाद अगर मैं बी डालूं कि किंग मेरोल कजार में क्या लफड़ा हुआ कि प्रिंसेस ने गिफ्ट तो ले लिया बट मीटिंग का कोई डेट ही सेट नहीं किया. गिफ्ट लेके भी अगर कोई डेट नहीं देती तो वो तो रिग्रेटेबल है. तो ए के बाद बी तो आ सकता है. ए के बाद डी, मेरल कजार के कोर्टशिप में क्या लफड़ा हुआ. डी, प्रिंसेस नेम्स अ डेट, फॉर्मल मीटिंग टेक्स प्लेस, एवरीथिंग बजेस अलोंग स्मूथली. तो अगर प्रिंसेस ने भी हाँ कह दिया, मीटिंग होके सब कुछ मस्त चल रहा है, तो उसमें रिग्रेटेबल क्या हुआ. दैट मीन्स ए के बाद डी मेक्स नो सेंस, which means E C D A B has to be my answer. You get that? E C D A B. So originally, what is supposed to happen? The king, if he sends a message to the princess, princess is supposed to say yes. Then they are supposed to go on date. Then everything is happily ever after. Fairy tale खत्म. But मेरोल कजार के केस में कुछ लफड़ा हुआ. क्या प्रिंसेस ने गिफ्ट तो ले लिया बट मीटिंग के लिए कोई डेट ही नहीं दिया. So that is the way in which the story progresses and makes sense. Correct? Chalo. Next one then. Okay. So either it starts with A or it starts with C. A, who can trace to its first beginnings the love of Damon for Pythias, of David for Jonathan, of Swan for Edgar. तो ए तो लोगों के नाम ले रहा है, एग्जाम्पल की तरह लग रहा है. And C says, there is about great friendship between man and man, a certain inevitability that can only be compared with the age old association of ham and eggs. तो C talks about a generic statement कि जैसे एक आदमी और दूसरे आदमी के बीच में फ्रेंडशिप होती है, जैसे it talks about a generic thing. So starting with C makes more sense than starting with A. So I eliminate the first and the third option. So now C, friendship between man and man, age old association. E says no one can say what was the mutual magnetism that brought the deathless partnership of this wholesome and palatable foodstuff about. So ham and eggs जो food है उसी का आगे जाके foodstuff का description E में है, तो C के बाद E very good. Now A पहले आएगा या D पहले आएगा? So let us say A says who can trade, it talks about men. D says one simply feels it is one of the things that must be so. And let us take a look at B. B says similarly with men. तो अगर मैं कहूं कि जैसे खानों के बीच में कनेक्शन होता है उसके जैसे ही मेन के बीच में भी कनेक्शन होता है, एंड आफ्टर टॉकिंग लाइक दिस आई कैन गिव यू एग्जांपल्स ऑफ मेन. तो बी के बाद ए का होना इट मेक्स मोर सेंस. जैसे कुछ कुछ खानों का कॉम्बिनेशन होता है वैसे वैसे कुछ कुछ आदमियों का कॉम्बिनेशन होता है, एंड देन आई गिव यू एग्जांपल्स. सो आफ्टर बी ए लीव्स मी विथ ओनली ऑप्शन 2. So 2 is definitely my answer in this case. Most of you did get it right. Correct? Sure. Next. Okay. So either A, B or D से start हो सकता है. Great. A says events intervene. Intervene means came in between. So events came in between, and in the late 1930s and 40s, Germans suffered from overbranding. Okay. बट अगर मैं क्विकली देखूं तो नजर में दो चीजें पहले आती हैं. वन, आई हैव गॉट डेट्स ऑफ 1930s एंड 40s, एंड देन आई हैव गॉट अ डेट 1855. सो डेट्स को ऑर्डर में रखते हुए डी के बाद ही ए आना चाहिए. राइट, अगर मैं ये फंडा फॉलो करूं तो ऑप्शन वन तो ऐसे ही एलिमिनेट हो जाता है बिकॉज ए पहले आ जाता है. लॉजिकली इट मेक सेंस कि पहले डी होगा फिर ए होगा. ओके. Now, B says British used to be fascinated by the home of romanticism. Okay. And D says the first foreign package holiday was a tour of Germany organized by Thomas Cook in 1855. Okay. अगर ब्रिटिशर्स को रोमांटिसिज्म जहां पे स्टार्ट हुआ वहां की जगह पे इंटरेस्ट है तो ब्रिटिशर्स उस जगह जाने के लिए टूर पैकेज ऑर्गेनाइज करेंगे. So a little bit of knowledge. Germany, if you consider as the home of romanticism, and Thomas Cook, typical British name, then because Britishers are fascinated by where romanticism started, so they will think of making a tour. So then B before D makes sense. And if I go with B before D, then does BDAEC make sense? So B, Britishers used to be fascinated. D, first holiday package. Then events happened and overbranding happened. Then E, okay, after overbranding, Germany has been nervous about promoting itself abroad. And finally, reunification and federal government's move to Berlin prompted Germany to think about it. Okay, BDAEC makes sense. So option 3 can be my answer. Correct. Follow this, I hope. Right. Next. Looks like a passage from current affairs. Okay. Now, the wall does not simply divide Israel. Okay, कुछ wall की बात कर रहे, but which wall? I don't know. B says a chilling omission from the roadmap is the gigantic separation wall now being built in the West Bank. Okay, so B very specifically introduces which wall they are talking about, whereas A talks about the wall but does not introduce it. So B can be a better starter than A. सी से स्टार्ट नहीं होगा क्योंकि इट इज सराउंडेड. व्हाट इज सराउंडेड? डी, इट एक्चुअली टेक्स. अगेन डी से भी स्टार्ट नहीं होगा. And E, almost a decade after the end of South African apartheid, this ghastly racist wall. So if they are referring to something using this, then it cannot be the first statement. तो E से स्टार्ट नहीं हो सकता. सी एंड डी से तो कोई ऑप्शन ही नहीं है जो स्टार्ट हो रहा है. एंड ए से स्टार्ट नहीं हो सकता. तो देन बी ए डी सी ई इज द ओनली ऑप्शन लेफ्ट. So B, chilling omission from the roadmap is the gigantic separation wall being built in the West Bank by Israel. The wall does not simply divide Israel from putative Palestine state on the basis of 1967 borders. It takes in new tracks, blah blah blah. It is surrounded by trenches, and almost a decade this is going to be okay. So then B, A, D, C, E, second option is best. Ghastly means terrible. घास्टली, दिस इज अ घास्टली, एकदम गंदा पेंटिंग किसी ने बनाया है. सो दिस इज अ घास्टली पेंटिंग, या बहुत खतरनाक तरीके से किसी का मर्डर हुआ है, देन इट वाज अ घास्टली मर्डर. सो समथिंग वेरी टेरिबल, वेरी बैड इज घास्टली. ओके. try the next one. Okay. Now, I have got three options starting with either A, C और E. B and D से तो start ही नहीं हो रहा है. Okay. A. ए बोलता है लकीली द टाइड ऑफ बैटल मूव्ड एल्सवेयर. ये बैटल कहीं और चला गया. सो इफ आई एम सेइंग द टाइड ऑफ बैटल मूव्ड एल्सवेयर, that means I need a statement where was it originally. I will say the battle was originally, it was in this place, then it moved elsewhere. So A से start नहीं होगा, so third option I can reasonably eliminate. B से तो start नहीं हो रहा है, it and it का तो कहीं पे नहीं है. Okay. C says the Australian military knowing the position was hopeless planned to fall back to the southeast. Okay. You don't start something with a negativity that the position was hopeless. And also, if the why was the position hopeless, right? There was, you have to describe a position and then say that it is hopeless. So C से start करना is also not a great thing. Now, the only option left is E, both 1 and 2. So E, not many people outside Australia realize how close the Japanese got. Okay. ऑस्ट्रेलिया के कई लोगों को नहीं पता कि जापानीज कितने नजदीक आए थे. क्यों? तो do I follow with D or do I follow with C? D says they had captured most of the Solomon Islands and much of New Guinea and seemed poised for an invasion. Okay, makes sense. If if Australians don't know how close the Japanese got, then you start with what had happened. Japanese had captured and they were ready to attack. Okay. उसके बाद see the Australian military knowing that the position was hopeless. So जापानीज अटैक करने वाले हैं तो ऑस्ट्रेलिया को पता है कि पोजीशन होपलेस है. सीडी हो सकता है कि ऑस्ट्रेलिया मिलिट्री को पता है पोजीशन इज होपलेस है. जापानीज हैड कैप्चर्ड, नहीं, जापानीज हैड कैप्चर्ड सो द ऑस्ट्रेलियन मिलिट्री नो दैट इट वाज ऑस्ट्रेलिया, राइट? सो they could not do something. It was no more than a delaying tactic, but finally something else happened. So E के बाद D, C, B, all of them have something bad happening to the Australians, and then suddenly the entire thing changes in the last line E, which makes E, D, C, B, A a much better option than anything else. Correct? A lot of people have given me fourth one as the answer, but starting with C does not make sense because C may position was hopeless. What position was hopeless has to be described before it. Doesn't make more sense that we explain that and end it with okay. So you're going with option then. Both 3 and 4 end with E. Both 3 and 4 end with E. See, so E can either be in the beginning or the end. You either give the general situation and explain it, or you explain the situation and summarize it. So E can be at the end, but then between 3 and 4, can it start with E or C? I agree it can end with E, but here it cannot start with A or C. Whereas starting with E is also possible and all the others logically follow it. E can be at the end if there was a better combination. Starting with C, the Australian military knowing the position was hopeless. What position was hopeless? There was this position, and then you know that it is hopeless. You always solve it. A attacks, B knows it is hopeless, so B does something. You don't say B knows it is hopeless and then A attacks. No. Attack के बाद hope चला जाता है ना. So you cannot start with military knows the position is hopeless and plans to fall back. You start with Japanese has captured and they are ready to attack. So the Australian military thinks that it is hopeless and they cannot defend and blah blah blah. So that series makes sense in that particular order. Got it? Okay. Next. Okay, no right answer so far. Shailja just got it. Lot of people are giving me something else is the answer. Ding, 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 ding. Okay, maximum people are giving me 2 as the answer. That is CEBDA. Okay, C, look around and you will find a host of deals that are being inked or ready to be finalized. Could be a generic statement, I don't know. E, the first came. Okay. B, the first came. So this is in the past tense. B, now they are staring, present tense. And then D, then the media rested back. Why would I grammatically make a sentence in the past tense followed by present tense, then again the past tense? Rules of grammar say first talk about everything of the past tense, then you go to the present tense. So if I take CEBDA as the answer, then why would E, B, and D be in that order? That simply does not make sense, right? But if I take a look at another sequence, if I say that E, okay, first came something, D, then came something, and then B, it is something. Okay. So B also says that they are in the hurry to strike alliances agreements, and this is followed by look around and are have been inked or are ready to be finalized. So B and C both talking about the present, both of them talking about agreements. So then A, B, D, C right? EBDC, sorry, EDBC. There is only one option. So can A be in the beginning? So A says, call it the third wave sweeping the Indian media. What is the third wave? So first E, you talk about the first wave, then you talk about the second wave of media barons, then you talk about the deal makers, which is the current situation. So then AEDBC, fourth option, gives a lot of sense. Suave means something very sophisticated. Like we say, James Bond is a suave man. Suave means sophisticated, stylish. अबरेस्टा आई से यस इट मुझे पता था 99% वो जनता इट को देख के बोलेगी इट कैसे हो सकता है लाइक आई सेड प्रॉपर नाउन से स्टार्ट कर सकते हैं बट समटाइम्स ड्रामेटिक्स के लिए हम प्रोनाउन से स्टार्ट करके बाद में प्रॉपर नाउन ले सकते हैं सो इन दैट सेंस इफ आई से कॉल इट द थर्ड वेव what do I call the third wave? So the first wave this, second wave this, and this is the third wave. In that sense, a little bit of stylish writing is what they are using. So although using things like pronouns or things like it is also a pronoun, is not usually recommended. But in right in the beginning in the theory part, I also said, although not recommended, it is not impossible. You may have a sentence with a pronoun as the first sentence, provided the writing has a dramatic style in it. अगेन थर्ड का भी मुझे पता था तो कोई बोलेगा कि हमेशा सीक्वेंस में जाना चाहिए सी आई कैन से मीडिया इज द फोर्थ पिलर ऑफ डेमोक्रेसी so the first pillar is this, second pillar is this, third pillar is this, and fourth pillar is media. So I'm talking about something which is not the first one. So I'm talking about the third. So first then मैं बोलूंगा आज हम चौथे युग में हैं तो पहले ये था फिर ये आया फिर ये आया फिर आज का युग आ गया so it is not necessary that something which contains a number other than one cannot be the first one right if I'm talking about the Indian media ka third wave as the main topic I will start it and then start with the history so it is not wrong to start with the pronoun it is not wrong to start with a sentence containing some other number in it provided it makes sense you can always have it but all the sentences together have to be in sequence don't randomly pick up a sentence and say that because this cannot be in the beginning कुछ और होना चाहिए if you go with any other option then do all the statements in that particular sequence make order both grammatically and logically correct Vagisha what to do when confused between two lines which two lines का confusion है C, why not three? CAEBD. Again, so C, you're saying you will find a host of D's that are being inked. Okay, call it the third wave. Now, अगर मैं A को call it the third wave बोल दूं, ठीक है? Then E, the first came with the magnificent men. Now they are starring. Then the again EBD का problem है ना मुझे. E past tense, B present tense, D वापस past tense. भाई टेंस का सीक्वेंस तो मेंटेन करो दैट्स व्हाई थ्री तो बिल्कुल ही नहीं बिकॉज ईबीडी डज नॉट गो इन द ग्रामेटिकल सेंस टेंसेस का तो फॉर्मेटिंग रखो पास्ट प्रेजेंट पास्ट शिफ्टिंग नहीं कर सकते ना पास्ट पास्ट प्रेजेंट या प्रेजेंट पास्ट पास्ट डोंट पुट सम अदर टेंस इन बिटवीन टू टेन इन बिटवीन अ टेंस सो थ्री गेट्स एलिमिनेटेड राइट गॉट दैट Agisha also got it. Okay. Still waiting for Rai. Rai got it. Why 3 cannot be. Okay. Badhiya. Next. Chalo ji. No right answer so far. Yes, बाकी no, 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 no. Either I start with A, C, or E. Okay. A says the celebration of economic recovery may be as premature as the mission accomplished banner hung on the USS Abraham Lincoln to hail the end of the Iraqi war. So if celebration is premature, first you have to say that somebody is celebrating and then you say that this is premature. So A से start करना तो थोड़ा तकलीफ है. Okay. C says Washington responded to the favorable turn in economic news with enthusiasm. So response तो किसी चीज के लिए करोगे ना. You don't start with a response. Something happens and you respond to it. And C talks about a response. तो C से भी start नहीं हो सकता, which means E is the beginner. So E, third quarter GDP showed growth rate, blah blah blah, good news hai. So C, Washington responded. Okay, E and C together make sense. So now the question is, then I go with A or then I go with B. So E is a good news. C says there is a favorable enthusiastic response. A says the celebration may be premature. B says the struggle continues. So when you're talking about celebration, you first say that it is premature, or you first say that there is a struggle. Because of this struggle, it is premature. So first you give the good news. So E C तो साथ में आ गया. Then B, in at one time there is there is a favorable thing, but meanwhile struggles of families and communities continue. The celebration are not to be found, so the celebration may be as premature as something. So going with that, E C B D A might be the option. Let us check whether E C A B D makes sense. E C तो हमको पता है. Then A, the celebration may be as premature as something. Then B, meanwhile in the real world the struggle continues unabated and the celebration and hi-fis of Pennsylvania Avenue are not to be found. Okay, in some way A B D might seem to make sense, but if you go with BDA, that one on one hand something is good but there is also a problem on the other hand, that's why this celebration is premature, because EC both favorable, BD specific instance of something bad, and overall summary given by A. So also ECAB, although ECABD may not be a bad option, ECBDA is slightly better, going with 4 as the answer. ECABD is not wrong, but ECBDA makes it slightly better because you give specific examples of good news, you give specific examples of bad news, and then you give a general conclusion. If ECBDA was not an option, तो ECABD के साथ भी मैं चला लेता. चलो, next one. This one seems relatively easy. नहीं नहीं नहीं, अभी तक तो कोई नहीं. Nobody so far. No. Okay, प्रेष्ठा. प्रेष्ठा यस, बाकी कोई नहीं. राही यस, बाकी कोई नहीं. Okay. So A says 4 days later, Oracle announced its own bid. Now, before I go with that, every option starts with C. So my timeline starts with C, that in early June, PeopleSoft said it would buy JD Edwards, a small rival. Okay. Now, A, Oracle announced its own bid for PeopleSoft. B says PeopleSoft's boss called Oracle's offer as diabolical. तो A announcement करेगा, उसके बाद ही उस ऑफर के बारे में डिस्क्रिप्शन दिया जा सकता है. So A has to be before B. So any option where B is before is eliminated. But here all the options में A के बाद ही B है. Fair enough. D says, moreover, said Mr. Conway. So, who is Conway? B describes who is Craig Conway and then D. So, B के बाद ही D आएगा. So, any option जहां पे B से पहले D है is eliminated. And then E, on July 12th, PeopleSoft turned Oracle down. So, पूरी कहानी होने के बाद ही हम कहेंगे कि कंक्लूजन में क्या हुआ था, खत्म हो गई थी कहानी, उन्होंने ना बोल दिया. So CABDE seems to make the most sense, leaving us with option 1 as the answer. Option 1 makes the most sense. A makes an offer. Diabolical means evil, scheming, wicked. शकुनी मामा को हम डायबॉलिकल डिस्क्राइब करेंगे. इफ यू नो शकुनी फ्रॉम महाभारत, someone who is always wicked and scheming, चालाक, जो evil चालाक जनता होती है, diabolical, evil and wicked. Everybody got why CABDE option 1 is the best option? Right. Next. Blah, 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 blah. Now, this one either starts with a D or it starts with A. D says faculty members gave me the names of a few dozen articulate students and I sent them email. Okay, थोड़ा general सा है. But A says a few months ago I went to Princeton University to see what the young people who are going to be running our country in a few decades are like. तो पहले आप कोई कॉलेज जाके वहां के स्टूडेंट्स को मिलना चाहते हो तो फैकल्टी मेंबर्स कुछ लोगों का आपको ईमेल देंगे. तो A seems to be a better thing to start with than D. So first and second option को तो मैं स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड एलिमिनेट कर देता हूं. E says as she was falling asleep. तो ये she कौन है? A only talks about I went to university to see young people and उसके बाद immediately she was falling asleep में कोई description नहीं है. But ADBCE के साथ जाऊं तो I went to Princeton University, faculty members gave me the name of some students. Then B, I would go to sleep and then my mailbox will be full of replies. Then C, one senior told me she went to bed, and then E, as she. So the she can refer to the senior. So then ADBCE definitely makes a lot of sense. So we have to go with option 3 then. Hope everybody got this one. Next. Okay. Shikha, no. Preshtha, yes. Shelja, yes. Arman, no. Netra, no. Adi, no. No, 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 no. Arman, okay, yes. Okay. Now, from the options, I know either it has to start with E or it has to start with A. E says when you travel around the world collecting animals, of necessity, you also of necessity collect human beings. Okay. And then A says, I am much more tolerant of human being shortcomings than I am of an animal's. But in this respect, I've been lucky for most of the people I've come across have been charming. So E introduces that you also interact with people, and then it says that human beings are have shortcomings, this and that. So E makes a much better starter than A. That means options 2 and options 4 automatically get eliminated. So now I know E is the beginning. A says I'm much more tolerant. EA makes sense. EC. In these cases, of course, the fact that you're an animal collector also helps. Okay. E के बाद C क्या हो सकता है? I don't know. Then let us take a look at it. B says, then you come across the unpleasant human animal. And D says, fortunately, these types are rare. So if certain type is rare and that is fortunate, then it is that certain thing type has to be a bad thing. Only if a bad thing is rare, then you would say it is good that such things are rare, and the bad thing is the unpleasant human being. which means B will come first and after B you need D to come, right? But in both 1 and 3, we have got B and D together and in that sequence. So now the question remains, should A come before or after? A is a generic thing which says that first, most of the time I have come across charming people, but then there are certain people who are pleasant. You always talk about the good and then you talk about the bad. So A coming before makes sense. So A at the end, not so much, leaving us with 1 as the answer. So best option in this case is E, A, C, B, D. You talk about good things, then you say, but some are bad. Fortunately, the bad things are rare. That's a general sequence of in which you express your emotions. Correct. Got it, everyone? Sure. Next one then. Terror means dahshat. Terror as in terrorist. Phenomenon. Phenomenon means घटना नहीं. Phenomenon. How do I explain phenomenon? घटना. I think हाँ घटना. A phenomenon is a घटना. Phenomenon यानी घटना. Okay. So it either starts with B, C, or E. B says, how can then one characterize? How can then? Then word से पता चल जाता है कि ये पहला sentence तो नहीं है. So that eliminates option 2. C says, the phrase war against terror, which has passed into common lexicon, is a huge misnomer. Okay. E says, terror is a phenomenon, not an entity. So war against terror गलत है. क्यों? क्योंकि terror. So C के बाद E का आना makes sense. So even without reading anything else, if I have to go with SEBDA, since EBDA says phrase war against terror, which has passed into common lexicon and a huge misnomer, terror is a phenomenon, not an entity, either state or non-state. How can then one characterize a conflict to be waged against a phenomenon as a war? Besides, war has a juridical meaning in international law, blah blah blah, and surrendered or captured component of war. Okay, so war के related तीनों statements B, D, and A साथ में, and introduction of war and terror in C followed by terror. So then C, E, then B, D, A together makes the best sense, making 4 as the option. Okay, lot of words which we don't understand in this. Okay, lexicon literally means dictionary. Lexicon means dictionary. Misnomer, something which is named wrong, something which is named incorrectly. A misnomer. Nomer means name. So misnomer is something which is named incorrectly. Incarceration is to keep someone as a captive. To incarcerate is to keep someone as a prisoner. Dubious means doubtful. How can a question come in between a sentence? Why not? It can be a rhetorical question. अगर मैं कह इंडिया एंड पाकिस्तान कभी दोस्त नहीं हो सकता, तो फिर आप पाकिस्तान को कैसे सपोर्ट कर सकते हो? आप पाकिस्तान को बिल्कुल नहीं सपोर्ट कर सकते. Did you see? My first and third sentence were statements, and the second statement was a question. I'll repeat. India and Pakistan are enemies. How can you support Pakistan? You can never support Pakistan if you're a patriot. So first and third statement के बीच में मैंने question डाला, and it absolutely makes sense. So it is, don't always stick to norms के पहले क्वेश्चन नहीं बीच में कभी क्वेश्चन नहीं आ सकता. You can always have a question in between as long as the flow of sentences is sequential. E looks like a title. Okay, E looks like a title, but if you take a look at C, the entire 5 line is explaining why war against terror is a wrong phrase. War against terror, they say, is wrong. Why? Because terror is something, war is something, and they don't fit together. In that sense, C is the starter because the entire thing is based on that. The thing is not related to terror. The passage explains why using the sentence war against terror is technically wrong. Read CEBDA and you will get that sense. Correct. Moving forward. Most of you are getting it right. So या तो B से या तो C से start होना है. B says a different layout which had been patented was shown to be much faster. तो faster means comparison. तो कंपैरिजन करने के लिए पहले कोई चीज फास्ट है और उसके बाद आप बोलोगे कोई चीज उससे ज्यादा फास्ट है. सो इट कैनॉट स्टार्ट विथ बी. दैट मीन्स ऑप्शन 1 and option 3 automatically get eliminated. Now A talks about to avoid this QWERTY layout, put the keys most likely to be hit. Okay. C says the QWERTY design was solving a problem. And A says to solve this, but the problem has to be defined first. E says, so C says quartet design was to solve a problem. What is the problem? When certain combination of keys were struck, the tie were jammed. So to solve this problem, so CEA makes most sense. So CEA and BD ke baad B introduces the concept of Dora keyboard and D says this keyboard was faster but it was not adopted. So BD also makes sense, leaving us with second option CEABD. Right? Most of you definitely got this one. One or two who did not. I hope you understood where you made a mistake. Chalo. Next. ओके, इतना तो पक्का है कि ए से स्टार्ट हो रहा है बिकॉज ऑल दी ऑप्शंस आर स्टार्टिंग विद ए, राइट? एंड ए सेज ब्रांडेड डिस्पोजेबल डायपर्स आर अवेलेबल एट मेनी सुपरमार्केट्स एंड ड्रग स्टोर्स, राइट? ब्रांडेड जो डायपर है वो कई सारी जगहों पे मिलती है, ए सेज दैट, ओके? सो बी सेज if one supermarket sets a higher price customer would buy it elsewhere, okay? बहुत सारी जगहों में मिलती है और एक महंगा करता है तो दूसरा उसको सस्ता कर देगा, तो बी से सेकंड हो सकता है. So first and second still in the game. D says so the demand for branded diapers at any particular store may be quite price sensitive. Okay, A branded की बात करता है, D भी branded की बात करता है, तो A D भी हो सकता है. E says for instance only Savon drug store sells Savon drug diapers. A branded की बात कर रहा है जो हर जगह मिलता है, and E पर्टिकुलर की बात कर रहा है जो सिर्फ एक जगह पे मिलता है, तो A के बाद E तो नहीं हो सकता. So I have to eliminate A and E as an option, right? I will eliminate A and E together. A, E is out. So now between A, B, C, D, E, F and A, D, B, C, E, F and A, B, C, E, D. Okay, first तीन के बीच में, let's see. A talks about branded, B talks about branded, C talks about private label, D talks about branded, E talks about private label, and F talks about private label. That means A, B and D साथ में होने चाहिए, whatever order. C, E and F साथ में होने चाहिए, and उससे मुझे first and second eliminate हो जाता है. So A, D, B ये तीन साथ में, C, E, F ये तीन साथ में, 3 is my best option. Got this one? Okay. Last. और तेरी, ये तो समझने में ही त्रासवादी है. ये तो समझने में ही त्रासवादी है. Don't worry if you don't get it. You can leave this one if you don't understand it. It's very, very strategical in sentence. चलो, A या D से ही स्टार्ट होता है. Having strategy is a matter of discipline. A, D, strategy goes far beyond. तो सबसे पहले तो स्ट्रैटेजी का इंट्रोडक्शन A में बेटर होता है, D से स्टार्ट नहीं होगा, तो D को तो मैं एलिमिनेट कर देता हूं, राइट? Having a strategy is a matter of discipline. Okay. E says it involves configuration of a tailored value chain that enables a company. तो स्ट्रैटेजी के अंदर क्या क्या करना चाहिए? ओके. सी इट रिक्वायर्स अ स्ट्रॉन्ग फोकस. तो पहले स्ट्रैटेजी होने के लिए किस चीज की जरूरत है और फिर स्ट्रैटेजी बनता कैसे है. सो पहले रिक्वायरमेंट की बात करेंगे, उसके बाद विल टॉक अबाउट क्रिएटिंग इट. तो सी बिफोर बी वुड मेक सेंस, which means fourth is eliminated. Okay. D, strategy goes far beyond the pursuit of best business practices. Company must stay the course even during the time of upheaval and when a company blah blah blah. So F, B, C, D, E सब एक कंपनी के स्ट्रैटेजी की बात कर रहे हैं, एंड F टॉक्स अबाउट स्ट्रैटेजी एक कंपनी की दूसरा क्या कोई कॉपी कर सकता है. So ending with F definitely makes sense, but unfortunately both 1 and 2 talk with end with F. तो now I have to go कि C के बाद E या C के बाद B. तो C रिक्वायरमेंट की बात करता है, E कहता है के पंगे होते हुए भी you have to stick to your strategy, and then it says that you have to do something which helps you to give a unique value to others, right? And this is a strat. So you talk about what all is required in the beginning, and then you say, D says it's not enough that you follow best practices. Best practices means अच्छी चीजें जो सब कर रहे हैं वो ही हम भी करेंगे, नहीं. You have to do a tailored value chain. It's not enough you do what is good. You have to do something which is more than good, something which is extremely unique to you. So B should also come after D, right? And if B should come after D, it leaves me with only first option. So option A remains my best answer. This was a very very typical one. एग्जाम के अंदर एक समझने में टाइम लगेगा, एंड सेकंड द चांसेस ऑफ मी अंडरस्टैंडिंग द सीक्वेंस इज आल्सो लो. So ideally this example, if I'm short of time, I will not attempt. I will only attempt if I've attempted other questions, I've got enough time and I can spend more time on it, because it takes time to understand this particular sequence. But I hope now थोड़ा बहुत समझ में आया. नहीं आया तो चलेगा, आ गया तो बढ़िया है, नहीं आया तो then also it's okay. But in general, did everybody get jumbled passages? Chances of these things coming in CLAT very low, ILAT medium chances. But still better to do some basic ताकि अगर आ जाए तो we are not left. ठीक है, चलो then let's call it a day. Meet again tomorrow, same time, same place. Till then, tata, bye bye, see you.